Good day to everyone who have taken the time to join us today. And this is the fourth webinar in the IMS-managed ACB series that we have been hosting on for a while now. So we have already completed 3 webinars, and all the registrants have hopefully received the link to the webinar recordings as well as the document that we share during each webinar. So today's webinar, we have 2 speakers today. Snehal is going to speak about our Delta set of products. So the old Delta IMS product and the newer Delta Plus product, which is now known as the BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS-TM. And then she is also going to talk about the BMC AMI application restart control for restart control set of products. In short, the RCTL products. And then we also have Jake with us today. Jake is going to talk about BMC COPE and BMC AMI Batch Optimizer products. So without further delay, I will hand it over to Snehal. Snehal, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Subhashish. So hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the fourth webinar of the webinar series for BMC AMI data for IMS. I am Snehal Nalge, and I work as a developer on IMS system administration products with BMC software. And today I'll be discussing about the IMS-managed ACB support in our Delta and ARCTL products. So this is about me, and now I'll hand over it to Jake to introduce himself.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Jake Stantz. I'm a product developer here at BMC on a variety of the different product families, and today I'm going to be talking about AMI Batch Optimizer and BMC COPE. So if we could get right into it and head to the next slide. All right, so first off, BMC COPE, managed ACBs are supported by COPE. You can see for all of the varieties of COPE, the IMS-based system, DB control, DC control, managed ACBs are supported. And there is one exception, and it has to do with the DevX code debug flow. So DevX code debug was formerly called Expediter. And when you're using Expediter on an COPE managed IMS, that is currently not supported, but work is underway to provide that support. However, it's just when you're using code debug in TSO. If you're using the Topaz workbench, and now that's called the BMC AMI DevX workbench for Eclipse, everything currently works as expected. So it's just with code debug in TSO. All right, and then let's bump over to Batch Optimizer. All right, so for Batch Optimizer, the product does not support IMS-managed ACBs with the IMS keyword in a data policy. And the work is currently underway to provide that support. But I wanted to note here that if you have batch jobs that use IMS-managed ACBs to access IMS databases, the product does properly exclude those jobs just as it works today. So that's what I wanted to mention about those 2 products, and I'm going to hand it over to Snehal to talk about Delta.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. So as I mentioned earlier, I'll be talking mainly about the Delta and the ARCTL products. And this is what we have on our agenda today. We will look into these points as we move through the further slides. So I'll dive right into the first one, that is the IMS-managed ACB supported versions for the Delta and the ARC product. For BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS-TM and DBCTL, the supported version is 3.0.00, and for Delta IMS, whether it's DBCTL, DBDC, or DC, the supported version is 7.0.00. However, we strongly recommend to upgrading to the latest version of these products to avail the benefit of the ongoing development and the enhancements. And lastly, for the BMC AMI application restart control for IMS, the supported version is 4.2.00. First, we will take a look at how managed ACB support is implemented in BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS-TM and Delta IMS. We will begin by exploring why IMS-managed ACBs impact Delta products. But before that, just want to clarify that I'll be referring to Delta products many times in this presentation. And when I say Delta products, I am referring to both BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS-TM, which was earlier known as a Delta Plus, and Delta IMS. Most of the features which we are going to discuss are similar in these two products. However, if there is any difference, I'll specifically point that out. Now, coming back to the question, why does managed ACBs impact Delta products? Well, the main feature of the Delta products is to enable the dynamic changes to the IMS resources. Therefore, Delta products allow to create, update, and delete the directory definitions for databases and applications, as well as it enables to reload the runtime control blocks for databases and applications through Delta list request. And as we know, with managed ACBs, the runtime control blocks for the databases and the applications now reside in the IMS directory instead of ACB lib. The managed ACBs definitely impact these products. Okay, so let's take a look at an overview of how database and the application changes look in the ACB lib and managed ACBs environment. This diagram depicts the ACB lib environment, and on the left here, you can see how the directory definitions for databases and applications, and along with that, the transactions and the root codes are created or defined to the IMS using the mod blocks. Okay, we perform the mod blocks gen, and then you can use the mod blocks in online change to activate those changes to the IMS without when you are not using the Delta. Okay, to make the changes to the runtime control blocks, ACB online change is used with ACB gen and putting those objects into the inactive ACB lib. ACB online change moves that to the active ACB lib and also defines to the IMS. When we take the look at how Delta handles it for defining resources to the IMS, we don't need to perform mod blocks gen with Delta. You can directly use Delta list add, revise, or delete request to define those elements to the IMS. And we also store them in the Delta log to be able to reapply them when we cold start the IMS. For making the changes to the runtime control blocks, we have the request called as the Delta reload. For Delta reload, it is expected to have the changed control blocks in the active ACB lib before executing the reload request. Now let's see how it all looks in the managed ACBs environment. In managed ACBs environment, there is no change in the procedure for making the mod blocks changes, and it remains the same. However, for making the changes to the runtime control blocks, now instead of a ACB online change, you will be using import command in the environment running without Delta. Okay. In Delta, we will still be using the reload, but the control blocks will be read from the directory instead of ACB lib, the same way the import does. Okay, so this is just an overview of the changes in ACB lib and the MACB environment. Next, we will see the customizations which are required in the Delta products to support managed ACBs. During IMS initialization, both the products will automatically detect if IMS managed ACBs is enabled, and if so, then the PSB and the DMB objects will be read from the directory instead of ACB lab. And hence, there is no customization required in the product to run with the IMS directory. However, uh, we provide some options on IMS ID options level and also on the Delta list application and database elements level to customize some of the managed ACBs related things. So, the couple of options which are applicable to the Delta list execution of applications and databases are enable MACB support and disable info messages in the IMS control region. Similar to this option, we have the option on the Delta list element as well, which is a copy ACB option. We will be talking about all these three options in detail in upcoming slides. However, the fourth option here, the rail GSAM option, which says that the reload GSAM objects, it is a special option which is available on the reload request of the application and the database elements. As we know, the GSAM databases and the applications are a special kind of a databases and the applications which are not required to define to the IMS, but their ACB and the DMB control blocks are expected to be in the Active Directory in IMS-managed ACBs environment. And hence, they definitely need the special handling in the managed ACBs environment. And that's when we introduced this new option, which allows you to perform the reload action on the GSAM databases and the applications, even though those databases and applications are not defined to IMS. The primary purpose of this request is to copy the DMB and the PSB objects from the staging to Active Directory. Okay, so there is another option which is available called as a backup directory feature, which is only available in the BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS-TM. It's not in Delta IMS. And this can be enabled by allocating backup directory dataset. And we will be talking in more detail about this in the later slides. Okay, so now right. So as we discussed, this is how these options look in the IMS ID options. These are the screenshots of the IMS ID options for both the products. Okay, and these are the two options that we discussed, which are related to the Delta list execution in the managed ACBs environment. Okay, so here we have the screenshots of a Delta list elements again for both the products. Okay, here we have the reload request for the database element, and we can see those two options here, that is reload GSAM object and enable copying objects into the active directory. The reload GSAM is set to the no by default, and this copy ACB is set to yes by default. Okay. Similarly, this is for Delta IMS. We can see the reload request for both database and the application and these two options here. Now, let's take a closer look at what these customization options really mean. The first one is enable MACB support in Delta list processing. This feature basically helps to manage how the runtime program and the data management blocks are moved from the IMS staging directory or backup directory for change manager for IMS-TM into the active directory when you process Delta list operations like add, reload, or revise. Okay. You can control this, as we discussed earlier, you can control this by setting the option in the IMS ID options, which is called as the enable MACB support and delta list element for application and the database option called as the copy ACB or enable copying objects into the Active Directory. To be able to copy the objects from the staging to active or backup to Active Directory, both of these options needs to be set to enable. Okay, otherwise the objects will not be copied. So here I think we need to take a note that if the IMS ID, if in the IMS ID options this option is disabled, you won't be able to activate the changes using the delta. So that's why we recommend that you keep this option as an enable, and in the delta list execution on the element level, you can control whether you want to copy the objects for the specific element or not. Okay. Right. So the next option in the IMS ID options is disable info messages in IMS control region. This is a new feature which is currently under development and is expected to be released by mid-September. When this option is selected, it suppresses the informational messages, which you can see here. Okay, these are the messages which are normally returned to the IMS control region job log whenever PSB or a DMB members are copied into the Active Directory. We provide these separations of the messages as an option. Because if you typically reload DMBs and the PSBs in very small batches, then these messages can be helpful as a audit messages. The separation feature was mainly implemented to allow the customers with the large number of PSBs that reference to the same database to suppress the messages in the control region. Okay. That covers the customization options available in both the products. Now let's take a look at the backup directory feature. Okay, the change manager for IMS-TM backup directory is an optional feature in delta list processing that creates a backup copy of the PSB or a DMB object before the Active Directory is updated during the delta list add, revise, and the reload request. So what is this backup directory is? This is the directory that is known only to Delta, and this directory has to be defined as a V2 PDSC, and it uses a PDSC feature called as a member generation, which allows multiple generations for a member to be stored in the library. Okay, and that's why it can maintain the multiple copies for the PSBs and DMBs, multiple backup copies up to the limit which is specified by the maxgen parameter. This parameter can be specified while allocating this data set. Okay. When we decide the name of the backup directory, we need to follow some specific naming conventions. The high-level qualifier of the IMS catalog database determines the prefix of the backup directory dataset name. And the last qualifier in the dataset name must be DLP DIR BK. The TCB information is same that is used for the other IMS staging and the directory datasets. Okay, so this feature is basically enabled by allocating this dataset by following these rules. And you don't need to restart the IMS to enable or disable this feature. You just have to allocate the dataset to enable it, or to disable it, you can either delete the dataset or you can rename it to some other name. Because every execution of the delta list, we dynamically allocate this dataset. This backup directory feature can also be used to back out the changes made to the PSBs and the DMBs, and we will look into that workflow in the later slides. As so far, we have seen how to configure these options. Now let's see how you can verify them once you have configured them. You can issue a display DLA options command for Delta IMS or display DLP options command for Delta Plus. This basically displays all the IMS ID options and their values. Um, and there you can see it also displays the settings related to the managed ACBs. Along with that, we also get the dataset name for the IMS directories, staging and the active directory here. In Change Manager for IMS-TM, if backup directory feature is enabled, then you will see this backup directory name as well. If it's not enabled, this will not be displayed. So that is how you will understand if the backup directory feature is enabled or not. Right. So BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS-TM also provides some commands related to the catalog, which displays the information related to the IMS catalog and IMS directories. So these are the three commands example that I have listed here. Okay. The first command, which is display DLP catalog library, which is a database of the PSB name. Basically, this displays the timestamp of the specified PSB or a DMB occurrence in the IMS catalog from the oldest to the most recent order, and it provides the status information about the member which is currently active and the member which, if there any, which is pending for activation. Okay. The second command here, which is display DLP catalog, where act T PSB name or a DMB name. This command verifies if the active timestamp in the catalog header matches the active timestamp of the member which is present in the active directory. And it provides the status. Okay, so this is a timestamp of the active instance from the catalog, and this is a timestamp from the active directory. It matches. If it was different, we would have got the status as a no match here. The next command, which is a display DLP catalog, where backup PSB name or the DMB name, it basically displays the timestamp of all the entries which are present in the backup directory and its status, along with its absolute generation number, its status, stating whether these entries are present in the catalog or not. The instances for these timestamps are present in the catalog or not. Okay, I think this is very important because to use that backup directory feature to roll back to the previous changes or the previous versions of the databases and the PSBs, you need to have the entry for that instance present in the catalog. Okay, and this is how you can verify it. Now that we have covered all the customization options in detail for Delta IMS and Change Manager for IMS-TM, let's move and explore the Delta list execution workflows in ACB-lib and in managed ACBs environment. Okay, so this is how the Delta list function in an ACB-lib environment looks. So in an ACB-lib environment, to make the changes to the databases and the application structures, we make the changes to the database and the PSB source, and then perform DBDGen, PSBGen, and ACBGen. For Delta, in ACB-lib environment, as we said earlier, that it's necessary to get those changed objects in the active ACB-lib before we execute the Delta request. Okay. So When we execute delta list, add, revise, or reload for PSBs or DMBs, delta in the IMS control region, it creates or updates the PDIR and the DDIR definitions, directory definitions for those PSBs and the DVDs, depending on what is the type of the request is. For add, it creates; for revise, it updates. And for revise and the reload, it flushes the existing PSB and the DMB member from the IMS control region, PSB and the DMB pool. And then it reads the new copy of the ACB and the DMB member from active ACB lib. If the PSBs and the DMBs are defined as a resident, those will be made as a non-resident until the next restart, and they will be scheduled or they will be loaded when the next PSB is scheduled for those members. Except for the fast path objects, the fast path objects are reloaded immediately as part of the request. Okay, so in the ACB lib environment, it's expected that the change member needs to be in the active ACB lib. Okay, and the objects are always read from the active ACB lib. Right, so this depicts the flow of the delta list request in the managed ACBs environment when copy ACB is enabled in both IMS ID option as well as in the delta list element. Okay, in managed ACBs environment, to make the changes to the database and the applications, we can either perform the gens along with the catalog populate utility, or you can execute DDL. What it does, it adds the new instance for that PSB and the DB metadata in the IMS catalog, and also updates the header segment with the pending timestamp, and moves the copy of the PSB or the DMB or the ACB or the DMB in the staging directory for that changed object. Now, when we execute a delta list, add, revise, or reload request for the PSB or DMB, or if it's a reload for a GSAM database and the PSB, what delta does, it first checks or verifies if the copy ACB is enabled. If it's enabled, then it verifies if there are any objects which are part of this delta list request are present in the staging directory. If they are present in the staging directory, they needs to be moved to the active directory. However, before that, for change manager for IMS-TM, we know that we have the additional feature called as the backup directory. So what the change manager for IMS-TM does is, if it finds if there are any objects that needs to be copied from the staging to active directory, and if the objects for that member already present in the active directory, then that will be backed up into the backup directory. Okay, then it moves it from the staging to active and updates the catalog to update the timestamp or switch the timestamp from the pending to active in the catalog header segment for that PSB and the DMB. Okay, so this is how it works. Then it continues with its processing in the control region with defining the DDIR and PDIR again depending on the request, and flushing the existing member and reloading the ACB and the DMB control blocks from the active directory. Now here, if it's a reload GSAM request, this part will not be performed, because for the reload GSAM request, we are just interested in this part where we want to move the objects from the staging to active directory. Okay. So with that, we can activate the changes to the databases and the application members in managed ACBs environment, and there is no need to perform the import command. Now let's see what happens when copy ACB is disabled either in the IMS ID options or in the delta list elements. Okay. Same way we have the objects here. Now when we execute the delta list and when delta finds that the copy ACB is not enabled, then we do not copy any objects from the staging to active directory. However, it continues to do the further processing by defining the PDIR and DDIR and reloading the objects which were their existing members from the active directory. However, here we need to make a note of one point is that when copy ACB is disabled, reload GSAM request is going to fail. Okay, uh, because the only purpose of the reload GSAM request is to copy the members from the staging to active directory, and also we will not be able to make use of the rollback feature of the backup directory. Okay. Next one here is how to roll back the changes to the applications and the databases using the backup directory feature. BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS-TM, it provides one ISPF feature called as the copy element, which allows to create the delta list request by copying objects from IMS directories. And the same feature can be used to create the reload request for the member which is present in the backup directory. Okay. And when that delta list to activate the member from the backup directory is executed, then delta first again checks if the copy ACB is enabled. If it's not, then it fails a request. Yes, then it checks if the metadata for that instance is present in the catalog or not. If it's present, if it's not present, then again it fails a request. And if it's present, then it copies the specified object from the backup to active directory. And in the same way, when we copy from the staging to active directory, when we copy from the backup to active directory, we also need to go into the catalog and change the active timestamp in the catalog header segment to reflect the timestamp of the object that we are copying. Okay. Then it continues with its usual processing in the IMS control region and loads the changed or rolled back changes to the databases and applications from the active directory. So this is how the rollback feature works in the change manager for IMS-TM. And that was what I had as an overview of IMS-managed ACB support in Delta products. And now let's move on to ArcCTL product. BMC AMI application restart control for IMS and the batch control facility product component. It fully supports IMS-managed ACBs. There are no customizations which are required in the product to operate with the IMS-managed ACBs. Okay, so that wraps up everything that I wanted to share with you today. And this is the QR code for the MACB support technical bulletin for all BMC AMI data for IMS products, which you might have seen in the earlier presentations as well. And with that, I would like to thank you all for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Hey, thank you, Snehal, and thanks to Jake as well. for the invaluable insights. So I do not see any questions yet in the Q&A panel. So for the information of all the participants, you can either drop in your questions into the Q&A panel, or you can choose to unmute yourself and ask questions to us directly. Snehal, I had one question. So you have told during this presentation that the backup directory feature is not available in the old Delta IMS product, right? It's only
That's
available
right.
with our Delta Plus, or what we now call the BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS-TM product. So are there any other such features which are probably not available with the older Delta IMS product, but available only in the newer Delta Plus version of the product?
Yes, Subhashish. So the feature that we discussed earlier about the display commands related to the catalog information, even those commands are available only in the new product. Also, the copy element feature in the ISPF to create the delta list using the copying the elements from the backup active and the staging directory. That feature is also not available in the Delta IMS. So these are some of the enhancements or the improved features that we provide in Delta Plus product.
Okay, perfect, Snehal. And also, if I remember correctly, Snehal, correct me if I'm wrong. The our modern web-based sysadmin GUI is also, I mean, the user is only able to access our modern sysadmin GUI only with BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS-TM, right?
That's right. Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
yeah.
And if it's not just about the managed ACBs, Subhashish, like there are a lot many other features which are available in the new product, which are not there in the Delta IMS. It's a really big list, and we are working on the white paper for that. So that will be out soon. That includes both the features related to the managed ACBs and the non-managed ACBs.
Okay, perfect. That's good to know. Yeah, yeah. I think that white paper would definitely be useful for all the users of the product.
Yeah.
Okay, so I still don't see any questions. Um, but that's not a problem. If you have any questions for us later, please feel free to reach out to us. Through the usual means, you reach out to BMC, and we'll help answer all the questions for you. So I think we are done for this webinar. But before we wrap up the call, I'll like to state that our next webinar, which is going to be the 5th webinar, is scheduled to happen on, let's see if I remember on top of my head. Yeah, it's 4th of September. 4th September at the same time. And the topic for that webinar would be our modern web-based graphical user interface products, namely BMC AMI Database Advisor for IMS, BMC AMI Change Manager for IMS, our DBA toolkit, and IMS console. And also we'll talk about our the sysadmin um, uh, web-based GUI, and also Energizer for IMS Connect GUI. Right, so all the graphical user interface products that we have, those will be the topic for our 5th webinar, which is coming up on 4th September. And please wait for a separate registration link from us, which will probably be out tomorrow or day after tomorrow, giving all the people sufficient time to register for the 5th webinar. So having said that, I think thank you everyone for your time. I hope it was a wonderful session, and a special thanks to our speakers, Jake and Snehal, once again. So thank you everyone.